This week, the parasha of Lech Lecha deals with self-discovery and journeying into one's potential. It begins with the words and the instruction from God to Abraham, Lech Lecha. It could have simply said, Lech, go. Why Lech Lecha? Go to you. What does that mean, go to you? Furthermore, if God tells Avram, travel, and he gives him a destination like Israel, why must the Torah say, leave your land? Lech lecha me'artzecha, from your land, u'me'ladecha, and your birthplace, u'me'beis avicha, and your father's home. Simply say, travel, go. Furthermore, in this week's parasha, we mentioned 3 times the promise of God to Abraham that your children will inherit the land of Israel. Zaracha etein es haaretz hazois. I will give you the land of Israel for you and your children. What is the connection between Avram's traveling and the land of Israel? Furthermore, at the end of the parasha, God tells Avram to change his name. Your name is no longer Avram, but Avraham, and similarly Sarai, Sarah. And after that, only after that, does Avram and Sarah give birth to Isaac. Why was it incumbent upon them to change their name as a prerequisite to have their son Isaac? And furthermore, before that, Avraham Avinu was again commanded, the first official commandment of the Torah given to Avraham, to circumcise himself, to have the bris. How do all of these different stories connect into one parsha? We explained many times that the bris is not only for a man, but spiritually, the Talmud says women are born circumcised, that they have this advantage of this unification between man and God. So what is the meaning of the bris, and how does this connect to Lech Lecha, to leave your land? Avram Avinu is 75 years old, and similarly his wife is 65 years old. At that time, Avram had tremendous stature, fame, power. He was rich. He had an army. He had tremendous land, many companies. He was the CEO of many large, successful companies. And usually at that time, a person decides they want to retire. And God tells Avram, no, Lech Lecha. It's time to move on to a new place, a bigger place. But Avram turns to God. God, I did everything already. I made your name known. I wrote many books, which he did. He had public arguments and debates proving the oneness of God, monotheism. He had an entire nation that he created, followers of Avram. It's time to take a vacation. Time to retire. God says, no. Lech Lecha. I want you to move on. But this Lech Lecha is different than all the other Lech Lechas that you traveled until now. It's Lech. The going should be to you, to yourself, to your essence. I want you to discover your inner powers. I want you to journey to the essence of your soul. Because all of these accomplishments that you did up until now is based on Artzecha, Meiladecha, Beis Avicha. Is based on your land, your birthplace, and your father's home. Which means it's based on your own desires, it's based on your own intellect, it's based on your own habits. But that is a limitation. That is an obstacle. You have to go beyond that obstacle. You have to go to the essence of yourself, beyond your limitation, and find your true potential. And through that, you will have the ability to grow and transform yourself into a new reality. So therefore, Lech Lecha means discover yourself. And this is a commandment to every single one of us, regardless how old or young we are. God says now you have a new mitzvah, a new instruction. No matter what you accomplished, no matter what you did, it's time to move on and self-discovery. And you can say, well, I'm too old. Avram was 75 years old. And it's not about how old you are. If we connect with God, who is infinite, then we have that infinite power as well. The Talmud tells us something very interesting. That God created the world for 6,000 years. The first 2,000 years are chaos. The second 2,000 years are dedicated to Torah. And the third 2,000 years are called Yemos HaMashiach, the days of Mashiach. The Arizal tells us that Avraham Avinu, Abraham, began the second part of creation. He began the 2,000 years of Torah. And therefore, the portion of Lech Lecha is an introduction to the receiving of the Torah on Sinai. Comes the question to mind, why do we need to read Lech Lecha every year? Lech Lecha talks about leaving a foreign country, moving to the land of Israel. One can argue the Jewish people have the land of Israel. We have our own army. Many Jews are living there today. Why Lech Lecha read about going to the land of Israel? And similarly, the idea of Lech Lecha reminds us that we now begin the 2,000 years of Torah, which is the introduction to the receiving of the Torah. But already we did receive the Torah on the year 2448 on the Jewish calendar. So why now again do we need to read this introduction to the Torah when already we have the Torah? On the most basic level, the answer is because every day God gives us the Torah anew. We just recited the bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed you God. No saint HaTorah who gives us the Torah today. We didn't say you gave us the Torah. We didn't say you're going to give us the Torah, but rather today, again, God came down on Sinai and gave us the Torah. So Lech Lecha is the introduction for the Torah that we receive today. And similarly, the question comes to mind, God promises Abraham the land of Israel. Yes. And even says, Nasati, I already gave it to them. Now, in this week's Parsha, he did not yet give it to them. But yet, Rashi tells us that God sees the future, and his will is reality. So, his promise is as if already he gave it to the children of Abraham. We already have the land of Israel. Why again must we read this story this week? And here too the answer is, number one, many Jews are not yet in Israel. So it's a reminder, it's an encouragement to move to Israel, to be part of Israel, or at least make Israel here. Furthermore, in this week's Torah portion, God promises Abraham the land of 10 nations. However, he only gave us the land of 7 nations. The land of the Keni, Kenizi, Kadmoni was not yet given to the Jewish people. So therefore, there is this constant yearning and prayer and desire to not only have the land of the 7 nations, but one day also to conquer the land of the 10 nations, which will be given to us, by the way, without any war, without any strife, or any loss of blood. Finally, when we talk about the land of Israel, that all the Jews should be there in order to create, once again, the Jubilee law and many of the laws of the Torah that are incumbent upon the Jews only when they live as an entire nation in the land of Israel. We are talking about not only the Jews of this generation, but the Jews of all the previous generations. And therefore, again, we have this yearning, this prayer to return to the land of Israel. But in truth, it's a lot deeper than that. And that is with the mitzvah or the commandment or the story that God tells Avram, no longer shall your name be Avram, but rather you should call your name Avraham. What's the difference between Avram and Avraham? It sounds the same.
Syllable.
It's one letter. It's the letter Hey. What's the difference? In the Torah, it tells us that Avraham means you shall become Av Hamoin Goyim, the father of all the nations of the world. Till then, he was Avram. He was the father of Aram, which was the city in which he was living in. And now God says you won't only be the father, the master, the leader, the CEO of your own city, your country, but rather you'll become the father of all the nations of the world. Now, why is this a prerequisite to give birth to a son, Isaac? Isaac was a Jew, not the father of all the nations of the world. And yet we find that this is the Torah sequel and the introduction to the birth of Isaac. The meaning of Avram not only means the father of Aram, but Avram also means, Av is a metaphor for intellect. Ram means a very high intellect. Ram is elevated. Avram Avinu was a genius. He was a scientist. He knew all the secrets of creation. In his debates, he proved it through cosmology and through creation. He wasn't only a believer in God, but he was actually factually able to give scientific proofs for God's existence. But Avram Avinu lived in a very high spiritual world. And to some degree, he was very, very separate from the world around him. Comes along the Torah and says that no longer should he be inverted, but rather he has to go out and spread this knowledge of God to the entire world. Spiritually, not only should he be in the clouds, in the spiritual realm of holiness, but also to become Av HaMoin Goyim, to impact the nations of the world, the ordinary people, even those who are not so spiritual, that in your daily routine there should be the knowledge and connection with God. And this is why immediately at that time God says you should circumcise yourself. And this is the first official mitzvah that Abraham is given, and this is the first mitzvah that every child has when they're born, to go undergo the circumcision, the mitzvah of bris. Now, there are 613 commandments in the Torah. Why is this the mitzvah that God chose for Abraham to be the first official mitzvah and the introduction to the receiving of the Torah on Sinai? And the answer is that the mitzvah of bris is really the paradigm of all mitzvahs, because of the fact that you're taking now a mitzvah, which is spirituality, which is God, and you are inserting this mitzvah in the physical flesh. There's a transformation in the flesh of the human being, that till now he was not circumcised, and now you put God's signet onto the flesh. And which part of the body, which according to Kabbalah is considered to be the lowest part of the body. So here you're taking the highest of spirituality, God, the creator of the universe, and you're bringing God down into the flesh. And what part of the flesh? The lowest level of the flesh. To transform that flesh and make it holy. And this is really the objective of every single mitzvah. That God gave us the 613 commandments of the Torah. God empowers us to take everything that we are involved with, everything that we encounter in the world, and to make that object, to make that reality, to make that situation into a godly, holy, and proactive situation. And this is really the meaning that Avram began the 2,000 years of Torah. We spoke about this many times. What exactly took place on Sinai? What was the novelty of God giving us the Torah on Sinai? The Medrash tells us that Abraham fulfilled the entire Torah before it was given. So if that's the case, so what's the big deal about God giving us the Torah again? It's an old book. We want a new book. Why does God give us an old book on Sinai? And the answer, according to Kabbalah, is that before Sinai, there was a separation of spiritual and the physical. If you wanted to be connected to God, you had to live in a private place, a cocoon, and there connect with God, and then you were spiritual. But when you went into the everyday world, at that time, you would become part of the everyday world. There was no way to merge the two opposites. The unique quality of Matan Torah was that God came down onto the mountain, Moses went up to Sinai, and there was a fusion of heaven and earth. And this fusion of heaven and earth began already with Avraham Avinu, with Abraham. And this is accomplished through Lech Lecha. When a person discovers within themselves that they have godly powers and that whatever they accomplish up until now is a limited accomplishment and they have the potential to accomplish more, then you now become transformed. Now you have the ability to fuse heaven and earth. and therefore you have the power of affinity. So this is a very powerful parsha. It's transformational, that each one of us has this mitzvah, this instruction of Lech Lecha, to look inside ourselves, to go deeper into ourselves, to take this journey of discovery, to be able to truly make this transformation. I had an uncle by the name of Rabbi Yitzchak Hecht. He was a very powerful individual, a great scholar, a dynamic speaker. And he was sent by the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe and then by our Rebbe to go to dormant villages and communities and galvanize the communities. And then ultimately he ended up in New Haven, Connecticut. In Tafshin Lametes, which is 1979, he wrote a letter to the Rebbe that he's under tremendous stress, financially, emotionally, and he wants to give over his position to somebody else. Someone else should come take him over because he's retiring, he's out of here. And the Rebbe sent him back a very interesting, powerful, and comical letter. And the Rebbe said, it's interesting that you ask for someone to replace you because terem yikrou vani emer. Before you asked the question, I already responded. How did I respond? By sending someone to your town by the name of Rabbi Yitzchak Hecht. And obviously from your letter and previous letters, you have not yet met this individual. And you don't know who he is. But once you meet him, you will see the powers that he's endowed with and the blessings that he has. Your entire life will be transformed. You will have more joy in your life, you'll have more trust in your life, and more success in your life. This story encapsulates the entire parsha of Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha means go back and find yourself. Because this, yourself, is the most powerful person in the world and has the answers to all your questions. And by finding yourself, you'll have more trust in God. By finding yourself, you'll have more success in the world. And by finding yourself, you'll be more productive. So Lech Lecha, we read it last year, we read it the year before, and the year before that. And we're going to continue to read it next year also. Because as much as we accomplished, as much as we discovered, there's more to dig, there's more to find, and there's more to do. So to bless each and every one of us as we begin the new year, after the prayers of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Simchas Torah, the new inspiration that we received from the high holy days, to take this new inspiration and this new empowerment, and to travel, Lech Lecha, to move on, to discover, and with God's help, to find the ultimate blessing, to go to the land, Eretz Tova Rechava, a land that is good and wide, the ultimate Israel. Because Israel means Eretz Yisrael, Eretz HaKodesh, to take Eretz, to take a land which is mundane, and make this into a holy land. To make this a land that is Eretz into Yisrael, into something which is Jewish, godly and holy. So each one of us can take our homes, can take our kitchens, can take our living rooms, can take the entire environment and community and transform this into Eretz HaKodesh, into a holy land, and to see the ultimate blessing, the coming of Mashiach, b'mheira b'yimeinu, amen.